Hello, aspirants, and welcome back to the Current Connect series. In this episode, we are discussing issues related to the Indian economy, where we will explore the most significant updates and trends from the month of June itself. So, let's get started. So, the first topic is on foreign portfolio investors or FPIs and how they play a pivotal role in our economic landscape, right? But before we dive into the intricacies of FPIs, let's take a moment to understand what sets them apart from another key investment concept, which is foreign direct investment or the FDI. So FPI and FDI are two distinct paths that international investors take to engage with our economy, isn't it? So FPI doesn't grant direct access or ownership into companies' assets, right? While FDI involves a more hands-on approach, which gives investors the control in a business. FPIs hold a small portion of the shares of a company, while FDI is owning significant stake in a company. Right? Now that we understand the difference between these two, let's zoom in on the FPIs, which have been making headlines lately due to some proposed changes by the Security and Exchange Board of India or SEBI. Currently, FPIs are registered with SEBI and invest in Indian securities as per SEBI's regulations. This setup ensures that their activities align with India's financial landscape and adhere to the Foreign Exchange Management Act or FEMA, which has evolved over the years to accommodate these investments or the FPI investments, right? And SEBI is proposing a new categorization of systems for the FPIs, which divides them into low, moderate, and high risk based on their characteristic and affiliations. The low risk FPIs would encompass government entities and central banks, while the moderate risk FPIs would include pension funds and funds in public retail funds, etc. All other FPIs would fall into high risk categories. So, why these changes? Well, it all boils down to preventing misuse and ensuring transparency. With regulations like Press Note 3 in 2020, which requires entities sharing a land border with India to involve the government in FPI investments, there is a need to ensure that the system isn't manipulated, right? And the proposed guidelines actually aim to bring a clarity to ownership and investment routes, making it easier to identify tangible ownership and curb strategies that bypass regulatory requirements, right? So with these proposed changes, India continues to adapt to the ever-evolving global investment landscape and ensures that our economic journey remains robust and resilient, right? So moving on, the next topic is on a concept known as Goldilocks Movement in the context of monetary policy. So first, let's understand the recent developments in India's monetary policy that brought the concept to the forefront. In a recent policy review, the Reserve Bank of India's Monetary Policy Committee or the MPC held the repo rate or the policy rate or the policy stance unchanged. They projected a GDP growth rate of around 6.5% for the current financial year, with inflation expected to be around 5.1%. Now, imagine an economic scenario where everything seems to be just right, a state of affairs that strikes a perfect balance. This is what we call a Goldilocks movement in economics. Think of it as the economic version of Goldilocks experience in the fairy tale. The economy is like a bowl of porridge, and the conditions are neither too hot, which can be either conditions of hyperinflation, and nor too cold, as in a recession. Instead, they are just right, leading to a sweet spot for sustainable growth and stability of the economy. So, what are the factors contributing to this economic sweet spot? Well, in India's case, positive factors like increased crop production this year, normal monsoon forecast, and growing consumer confidence have set the stage for this Goldilocks movement. However, despite the promising conditions, the committee remains cautious due to the concerns about the potential GDP growth decline, negative consumer sentiment, elevated inflation expectations, and external factors like global demand slump and geopolitical tensions. Now, speaking of MPC or the Monetary Policy Committee, let's take a closer look at the crucial decision-making body. It has 6 members, including 3 from the RBI and 3 appointed by the Indian government. The MPC is responsible for determining the policy rate, that is the repo rate, required to achieve the inflation target. The governor of RBI is the ex-officio chairman of the MPC, right? So, to sum it up, a Goldilocks movement in economics refers to a period of ideal economic condition that is just right for sustainable growth and stability, right? Next, in a recent development, the Union Government of India unveiled the minimum support prices or MSPs for 17 crops in this year's Kharif season. And to provide a comprehensive understanding of this policy, the Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices, or the CACP, has released the report on price policy for Kharif crop 2023 to 24. So let's start by understanding the essence of minimum support prices first. Think of it as a safeguarding policy implemented by the Indian government to protect our hard-working farmers against any sudden and drastic drops in farm prices. And these MSPs are determined by the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs headed by the Prime Minister himself. And these prices are set based on the recommendation of the CACP itself. And it was announced at the beginning of the sowing season. The roots of this system dates back to 1967, when it was introduced as a policy decision following the recommendations of Food Grain Price Committee, which was established in 1964 under the leadership of L.K. Jha. And the primary objective of MSP is to provide the farmers with a guaranteed price and act as a safety net that prevents them from being pushed into distress sale, right? And this also ensures a steady supply of food grains for public distribution, which is a crucial aspect of our nation's food security. Now, let's take a look at the array of crops covered under this policy. We have 7 types of cereals, including paddy, wheat, maize, and others. 5 varieties of pulses, such as chana and arhar. 7 oilseeds like groundnut and soybean, and 4 commercial crops, including cotton and sugarcane. But how are these MSPs calculated? Well, the CACP takes into account 2 key factors. One is A2 plus FL and the second one is C2 cost. The A2 cost actually encompasses all the direct expenses borne by the farmers, such as those on seeds, fertilizers, equipments, etc. The A2 plus FL factors the paid out expenses and also includes the value of the unpaid family labor, right? And on the other hand, the C2 cost extends beyond the A2 plus FL by considering rentals and interest foregone on owned land and capital assets. So that is all about the minimum support price and how it is determined, and that is all that we need to know as long as the exam is concerned. The next topic is related to the MSP that we have just discussed, that is the Fair and Remunerative Price, or FRP, for the sugarcane. The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs gave its approval for the FRP for sugarcane in the upcoming sugar season of 2023 to 24. But what exactly is FRP and how does it affect our farmers and the sugarcane industry? Let's understand. The Fair and Remunerative Price, or the FRP, is like a financial anchor for our sugarcane farmers, like the MSP for the overall farmers. Is the minimum price at which sugar mills are obligated to purchase sugarcane directly from these farmers. And this price is determined under the Sugarcane Control Order of 1966. But the interesting thing is, there is a dual price mechanism in place for the sugarcane. The central government announces the Fair and Remunerative Price based on the recommendations of the CACP. In addition to the FRP, individual states also have the liberty to announce their own prices for sugarcane, which is also known as the State Advised Prices. And often these State Advised Prices, or the SAP, tend to be higher than that of the centrally determined FRP. And to wrap it up, the FRP serves as a safety net, ensuring that our hardworking sugarcane farmers receive a fair price for their produce, while also ensuring a stable supply of sugarcane for the sugarcane industry, right? Next, we have an essential aspect of our nation's food security, that is the Open Market Sale Scheme, or the OMSS. In recent times, Food Corporation of India, or FCI, has introduced certain quantity restriction on states for procuring 2 vital food grains, that is wheat and rice, through its Open Market Sale Scheme. This development brings the spotlight on the OMSS and its significance, right? So imagine the OMSS scheme as a mechanism that the FCI employs to sell its surplus food grains, particularly wheat and rice, from the central pool into the open market, right? And you see, this scheme is designed to serve multiple purposes with a primary focus on maintaining food security. Through the OMSS, the FCI carries out an e-auction, which allows open market bidders such as traders, bulk consumers, and retail chains to purchase specific quantities of food grains at a predetermined price. And it's important to note that states aren't left out from the equation. They can also procure food grains through the OMSS without participating in e-auctions. This extra procurement supplements their existing supply to distribute the beneficiaries under the National Food Security Act. Now, let's explore some of the core objectives of the OMSS. This scheme operates to enhance the supply of food grains during the lean seasons, ensuring food security, isn't it? It also plays a vital role in moderating the open market prices, particularly in regions where there is a deficit. And it also aids in controlling inflation as well, right? If you understand that, now let's talk about the Food Corporation of India, or the FCI. It is a statutory body. So remember this, it is a statutory body which is formed under the Food Corporation Act of 1964. And under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, the FCI has been a key player in ensuring farmer interest through effective price support operations. It's also a significant contributor to the distribution of food grains across the country, which forms the backbone for our public distribution system across the states, right? So that sums up our discussion on FCI and the open market sales scheme. And the next development is on the Reserve Bank India's latest move to enhance the cyber security in the digital payment landscape. Recently, the RBI came up with a draft of Master Directions on Cyber Resilience and Digital Payment Security Controls for Payment System Operators. So before we go into details, let's first talk about the payment system operators, or the PSOs. These are the fintechs who make those seamless digital payments happen. From PayPal to RuPay, Visa, Paytm, they are the middlemen ensuring your money safely gets transferred from you to the seller. Now let's unveil the spotlight on the proposed guidelines. The RBI is concerned about the cyber resilience and security controls of these payment system operators, right? And under these guidelines, PSOs are in for a cyber safety marathon. They will need to roll out inventory management, approved cyber security measures, and even crisis management plans. And compliance with the Basel standard is also a part of the guideline. PSOs are now given a time frame when it comes to reporting any unusual incidents, be it cyber attacks or internal fraud. And they have got only 6 hours from detection to inform the RBI. And these guidelines apply to all authorized non-bank PSOs. So that's all about it. Next up, we have certain important reports which are crucial from the exam's point of view. First is World Bank's Global Economic Prospects Report. This report is published twice a year in January and June. And according to the report, the global economy is projected to slow substantially this year, and the advanced economies will face a pronounced economic slowdown. The World Bank's projection for India's GDP growth in the fiscal year 2024 are at 6.3%. While this is a bit lower than that previous estimate of 6.6% in January, it's still significant growth compared to other growing economies, right? And the positive factor is India's private investment seems to be soaring, which is fueled by rising corporate profits, and also the unemployment took a dip, going down to 6.8% in the first quarter of 2023. Next up is the Global Competitiveness Index, recently released by the International Institute for Management Development. The index ranks 64 countries, out of which Denmark, Ireland and Switzerland are the front runners in this global race for competitiveness. India slipped 3 spots to secure the 40th position. While it might sound like a setback, let's remember that India is still doing better than it was in the years 2019-21. The 3 main reasons that helped India in its score are exchange rate stability, compensation levels, that is the salaries, and improvement in pollution control, right? So here please note that the Global Competitiveness Report, that is the GCR, is a different thing, and it is published by World Economic Forum every year. This is sometimes confusing with the Global Competitiveness Index, and it has been asked multiple times in other UPSC examinations as well. Next up, the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare has introduced a significant advancement in the PM Kisan scheme with the launch of PM Kisan Mobile Lab, which features face authentication. This initiative marks a pioneering step in utilizing facial authentication for eKYC process within a government scheme. The face authentication is a state-of-the-art biometric security measure that uniquely identifies individuals based on the facial features. And this method of authentication is a part of broader biometric security framework, which also include iris scans and fingerprints as well, right? And by incorporating facial uniqueness, this security measure enhances the identification process and elevates security standards, right? Now let's talk about PM Kisan. The scheme was inaugurated in February 2019. It is a central sector scheme. That means the full funding comes from the central government. And the scheme's primary objective is to provide financial support to landholding farmers across the nation. Under the PM Kisan scheme, eligible farmers receive a direct benefit transfer of 6,000 rupees annually in 3 equal installments directly into their bank accounts. And this financial aid is provided irrespective of the size of the farmers' landholdings, right? And the responsibility for identifying the beneficiary farmers and their families lies with the respective state and union territory governments, right? So that sums up our discussion on various issues regarding Indian economy. Now, let's solve certain MCQs. The first question says, FDI is the formulation policy of which nodal department? Okay, so out of the options, the formulation policy for foreign direct investments or the FDI in India is the responsibility of the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, DPIIT, which operates under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. So the correct answer is option C. And FPI, as we discussed, are controlled by the SEBI, right? The next question says, the primary purpose of the RBI monetary policy is to maintain which of the following? Okay, so the primary objective of the monetary policy is to maintain price stability while keeping in mind the objective of growth. So, option 4 will be the right answer. To explain this further, the RBI Act of 1934 was amended in 2016 to provide a statutory basis for the implementation of flexible inflation targeting framework. What is inflation targeting? It means to control price and to maintain price stability. And inflation target is set by the government of India in consultation with RBI once in every 5 years. So remember this, that the inflation targeting is set up by government of India and not by RBI. RBI only recommends the target, right? And the inflation target of monetary policy is 4% of consumer price index with an upper tolerance limit of 6% and lower tolerance limit of 2%. Next, which of the following office approves fair and remunerative prices of sugarcane? As we discussed, the answer is option D, that is Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs approves the FRP. CAP recommends the FRP, that is the Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices, CACP. It recommends the FRP, but the ultimate approving agency is CCEL, right? The Global Competitiveness Report is published by which of the following options? As we just discussed, the GCR is published by the World Economic Forum, right? But the Global Competitiveness Index is published by the International Institute for Management Development. So the right answer is option C, that is World Economic Forum. So that's all for today. We hope that this session has been insightful and has helped you to grasp the concept in a better way. Stay curious, stay engaged, and continue to explore the ever-evolving landscape of current affairs. Thank you for joining us through the Current Connect series. Until next time, stay informed and stay connected.